Welcome to the Expert Edge. This is the show where we bring on experts in their fields of health and wellness practice, hear their stories, and learn what they see working in the field of diabetes reversal and prevention. So I'm happy to introduce today's experts, Julie Freeman and Denise Cordero. Welcome to both of you ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So, as by way of introduction, Julie Freeman is a licensed integrative nutritionist, functional medicine provider, and she has over 35 years experience combining modalities from conventional medicine as well as functional and integrative medicine. She did graduate work in mental health, which gave her the opportunity to start the first outpatient eating disorder program at the world-renowned McLean's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. She also had another first when she started the interdisciplinary program for diabetic patients at Joslin Diabetes Center in Boston. There, she brought together exercise physiology, science, mental health, nutrition, combined those disciplines into a 24-week program. She has writing experience. She's put out 3 cookbooks and written a 4th book on her personal journey of transformation and healing from trauma. And most recently, she's partnered with Denise Cordero with their online platform, Intrinsic Wellness. So welcome, Julie, and let's get a little background here on Denise. Denise Cordero is a certified life coach, and she has a diverse background. She's been working in these different areas for over 25 years. She started out in healthcare practice management, got experience in clinical roles, working as a certified medical assistant, as well as handling operational and financial responsibilities in multi-million-dollar budgets. So you can see that she's been around the block and done a lot of different things. In her own healing journey, Denise really had a desire to support women in healing from past traumas. And she decided to straddle the worlds of healthcare and consultant in her work. So, one of the things that she has done is to start a podcast called Diving Deep with Denise. And then she and Julie together are co-creating Intrinsic Wellness, looking at providing a whole person root cause approach to healing and wellness. So I would like just a very short, let's say like the 1 or 2 minute version of how your interest in health started, Julie, and then we'll go to Denise and ask you the same thing, Denise.
Sure. Well, that could take actually the whole time.
Right, that's why I said 1 or 2 minutes.
Absolutely. I started out actually very obese and very sugar addicted, bullied, named, called, teased, and whatever. So started dieting at the age of 9 with my parents, who also struggled with food addiction and obesity. And that kind of started me down the area of interest in food. Go forward, and I did was a candy striper. That tells you how old I am. In my hospital during my junior year to learn about what did I want to do in the world in healthcare. Most of my family members were nurses, and I landed upon dietetics. So that started my career in undergraduate studies into dietetics, and then it's just mushroomed and gone on from there. The last thing that I'll say is I'm like a kid in a candy store minus the candy when it comes to learning and bringing all different kinds of modalities of health and wellness together.
I love that. And I think that's reflected in the work you do, that you've really tapped into a lot of different areas. What about you, Denise? What got you your interest really sparked in this aspect of health?
Absolutely. I love that Julie and I have so many similarities and so many parallels in our lives, because I too was a candy striper in my teen years, which is awesome. And I had so many models within my family that worked in healthcare as nurses, nursing assistants, nursing aides, that worked in hospitals. And so from a very young age, my dream was to become a doctor. And of course, those dreams became thwarted because I became a young mother. So I couldn't become a doctor, but I knew that I would stay in healthcare, and I had this passion to really just be of service to others. And there was something about helping people that were so sick become better that was always, it felt like near and dear to me. So I'm glad that not only did I have this rich background in healthcare practice management, even if it wasn't being a doctor, but I think that now being a coach, it feels so aligned with my purpose because I truly get to hold this beautiful space for others in their healing journeys.
Thank you for sharing that. So, I want to ask Julie the next question here, and that is when someone comes to you and they're looking to address health challenges, how do you come up with like a working assessment or like a preliminary diagnosis to figure out like what are the root causes that are creating the health challenges with your clients?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lucia. So I really like to get the comprehensive overview from people. So I will ask them for their last 1 to 2 years of all their medical treatments, assessments, labs, tests, et cetera, from the conventional world. If they are open to it, I like to look at what's been going on in their mental health world. And then there's a really deep history assessment questionnaire that goes from actually pre-birth all the way up until now to look at, were there in utero issues? Were there adverse childhood events, things that happened, environmental exposures and things of that nature? And then, as we're going to talk a little bit more about, we use a really wonderful epigenetics program that helps us to look at, the unique individual characteristics where there may be some challenges for people. So I kind of combine all of that together to kind of come up with a working diagnosis or assessment, and then actually meet with the person and ask, what is the most important thing that you'd like to get out of today? Share your story. So a lot of that first visit is really around hearing someone's story.
Mm. And I do think that whenever we're looking for someone to work with, it's important to know that the more they know about us, the better they can help us. Because, sometimes when we're thinking about health, we only think about, well, I had my tonsils out, I had an appendectomy, my vaccinations are up to date or whatever, but we don't always think about like genetic testing is not something that traditional medical practitioners do routinely, but
Mhm.
that detailed history from pre-birth to present
Mm.
really can help us to understand underlying issues as you're bringing out, like not just medical things, but what's your history with mental health, depression, anxiety, maybe your family environment around that. And I love that you mentioned ACEs. For those of you that maybe haven't heard that term before, that's an abbreviation for adverse childhood experiences. And I believe that is like kind of a little bit more of a recent that research and science understanding that things that happen to us before we're 18 that are negative have long-term health effects on us. So your medical provider needs to know those things. And also you talk about lab work, which helps us to see a lot of what's going on right now in our lives. So I think getting that background information is so important before like putting a label on what's going on or saying, oh, this is what you're dealing with, because sometimes it can be complex. And I love how you do this really broad history. So I just want people to understand the importance of sharing a detailed history with their care providers. And you mentioned an epigenetics program that you use. Tell us a little bit about this. Is this something that's like only available to physicians or not? Like, how do you go about if you want to get this testing? Tell us a little bit more about what it does, and if that was something we wanted, how would we get it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I try to follow whatever is current and cutting edge in the healthcare industry, and then also really try to ferret out what things look like it's going to be smoke in someone's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I've been following genetics since it first came out, probably around 15 to 20 years ago. I've tried and used about 6 to 7 different genetic testing programs, and I want to just identify the difference between what we call low touch and high touch.
Okay.
Most people are very familiar with high touch genetic abnormalities. That would be like the BRCA gene or inborn errors of metabolism. We are not testing that. We're testing what we call low touch genes, which means that the genes are functioning, but they might be functioning less efficiently. They may have been damaged, potentially genetically, has been passed down. But it could also be that these genes have been mildly damaged from environmental toxicity, poor diet, medications, things that we don't think about that actually may have damaged the gene so that it's not functioning normally enough. And then all these enzyme reactions that allow us to actually utilize our nutrition to help to keep us healthy and balanced, they're not working properly. So what I love about this program is that it tends to be a lifestyle and food-based program first. Most of the other genetic programs that I have tried, it was a pill for every snip. Now we start getting back to sort of that conventional medicine route, like, take a pill, it'll cure your ill. No, you need to have some skin in the game. You need to understand, if you increased these foods or if you decreased these foods, if you added some of these supplements in for support. And then I'll have Denise talk about some of the other lifestyle aspects, which are just beautiful. It gets into exercise and endurance and sleep and rest and dry brushing and all kinds of different things. So that's one reason why we really love this. And then in our population, we're working with a lot of folks that also have a lot of immune, allergy, sensitivity, and chemical reactivity. So we can actually create meal plans based on not only the genetics, but based on whatever's going on in their immune world, and then create specific meal plans for people and help them to put together balanced eating, which is really wonderful. I'd love to have Denise kind of talk a little bit about those last two parts, which is again more of that lifestyle part that we use in the genetics.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
what are the areas there that you like to cover, Denise, that we, based on what you learn about where someone is, tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in the beginning, before the client gets their genetics testing, like Julie said, we have a working assessment of where that client needs some help and needs some support. And this is where I like to spend some time with a client and really gauge what their motivation level, what their commitment level is, and what is their why. We get to those deeper questions of purpose and meaning in their life. And these are helpful because they help to anchor the client when things begin to wax and wane or challenges come up and difficulties come up in making changes. Once we've had the genetics test, then this is where the beauty really begins to happen, because we are able to precisely look at what are the areas of health and lifestyle that we need to target. And this is where the coaching helps to bring it all together in with the mindset changes. As we know, change can be very, very difficult for many people. And so this is where we offer the support, and we look at, again, that personal why, and we bring some aggregate, some things to make the process fun. One example is one of the many things that we see in these personalized genetics tests is that our client's detoxification process may be compromised. How can we epigenetically override this? And so we look at different tools and resources that we can use in addition to food, such as dry brushing, which is a practice that has been used for thousands of years in Ayurveda. So we love to draw on not only science, but also these ancient wisdom traditions of traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda to bring into these practices to really enhance the process of healing for our clients.
What is dry brushing? If someone doesn't know what that is, how do you even do that?
Yes, so the benefits of dry brushing is that it helps to move lymph fluid in our bodies and to release it or help in the detoxification process. So what it requires is taking a dry brush, and usually the bristles are animal bristles, but they're also vegan for someone that doesn't want to use any type of animal products. They do have some vegan also products where it's not using animal bristles. And you take the brush and you actually brush upwards, dry brush, as it indicates. You brush your skin in an upwards motion, moving the lymphatic system around and helping in detoxification.
When you say upwards, just for example, if you're brushing your arm, you'd brush from the hand toward the shoulder.
Yeah, towards
From
the
the
heart. So everything
towards the
going
heart.
towards the
Yes.
heart.
Okay.
Yes, exactly, towards the heart.
I think that's really great. And I know not a lot of people talk about dry brushing, but I think it is one of the methods that can really help with lymph flow. And lymph flow is so tied in with our immune system that doing things that help stuff to move around so our body can deal with detoxification, with killing germs that are like trying to multiply in our body. The lymph system needs to be circulating well, and the brushing can really help. Now I'm going to ask you a question that just kind of out of left field, and I'm just curious if this is something that you have heard about or sounds right or not. But I know that there are some people who talk about like our clothing not being too tight, like having tight elastics around the like your legs or your waist or your arms, in that even like tight elastics can impede lymph flow. Is that something that you have heard anything about or talk about with your clients? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. I mean, we
Yeah.
certainly talk address clothing, clean clothing, off-gassing toxins and things like that. But also just that whole idea of giving expansiveness and the ability for the body to breathe. So whenever you've got anything that's tight and constricted, you are going to reduce not only blood flow, but oxygen flow and certainly lymphatic flow. So yes.
I love that. I love that. And going back to the dry brushing, is there like any timing that people should be aware of if they wanted to do that? Like, should they do it like just before they jump in the shower, or would you do it first thing when you get up in the morning? Like, what's good timing for it?
I think doing it before you hop into the shower is usually best. When it comes to creating new habits, it's always good to tie it into something that you are ritually doing on a regular basis so that you don't forget. It's like, for example, when you're taking your supplements and people say, I forget my supplements, we often suggest to put something next to their toothbrush because they will take it right when they brush, or to have it or place it strategically somewhere where they pass by every single time, next to their lunch, on the counter, on the table, or is it the TV, wherever it may be that is going to trigger that, I need to take this, I need to, take my supplements, or I need to do this. So before shower is usually ideal, and in the morning. And it's all the other thing with dry brushing, not only does it get things moving, but it's actually invigorating.
Yes, I've done it, and it makes you feel really good. And I think we don't think about the fact that it really stimulates circulation as well, just the tactile aspect of dry brushing. And I think it helps us to get rid of dead skin cells. So, all kinds of benefits to that. I love that. And I want to kind of skip over some of the specific nutritional things right now. We might come back to that based on our time. So I would also like to dig in a little bit more. You kind of, I think, got started here, Denise, in your secret sauce, where you're looking at the medical aspects of assessing people and their health challenges, what the epigenetic influences are. But what are some of the like underlying the ways we think, the ways we process emotionally that can have a real impact positively for building new habits and making changes in what we're doing?
Yeah, I like to often refer to two people that Julie has really gotten me into, and I'm like absorbing and just really digesting a lot of the education that they provide. And one of them is Dr. James Greenblatt, who is a prominent functional psychiatrist. And the other is Dr. Bruce Lipton, who's considered to be the father of epigenetics. And one of the things that Dr. Greenblatt says so beautifully, and I think about very often, is that we can't provide whole person care without spirituality. And spirituality is about meaning. It's about purpose. It's about connection and transcendence. And how an individual person approaches that or practices is individual and unique to them, whether it's through religion, meditation, community, however that may look like. And the other with Dr. Lipton is that he talks a lot about consciousness and the evolution of consciousness. Essentially, how we think, what we think can change our chemistry, like literally change our chemistry. Mm-hmm. And he proved this in a study that he did by cloning stem cells and putting them in different mediums. And he says, basically, the medium is the blood. We carry it with us. So our thoughts, the way that we think, how we think, really changes our blood and therefore can manifest in healing or illness. So these are definitely areas that we need to consider and talk about. Earlier, you were describing ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and how science, medical, is understanding how ACEs, there's this direct correlation between chronic illness later on in life with ACEs. So in our practice, we do talk about unhealed trauma because we understand how important that is in a person's healing journey, and being able to process that in a different way. So it isn't therapy per se, because we don't treat, we don't diagnose a person, but coaching is therapeutic because we're able to see our clients, often see their blind spots and the very limiting beliefs that hinder them from being able to heal and from feeling well.
It's very interesting you bringing that out, because I agree that whole person care must include addressing a person's spirituality. And obviously, when you're working with a set of clients, you'll have clients that come from a lot of different backgrounds. They might define spirituality in different ways. If you had someone come to you that saw themselves as a Christian, that believed in the Bible and believed that we were created by a loving God who designed our bodies versus some kind of random evolution, how do you work with that within that framework to help them on that aspect? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is honoring that uniqueness, honoring that individuality, and respecting those beliefs and working within that framework. In fact, part of the assessments and the questions that we ask as part of the onboarding process is asking those very questions.
Yep.
What does their spirituality look like? How do they practice it? How does it work for them? Do they draw on that spirituality or on those beliefs in times of challenge? Is it working for them or not working for them? And we also do other types of assessments where we look at personal values and the wheel of life assessment, because that truly helps us to not only know who our client is, but align how we support them that truly respects and honors who they are.
I think that's important for people to hear, because you may have like a personal perspective on spirituality personally, but it may be different from a client's, right? And so being very clear on where your client's coming from and how they see that aspect of their life, I think can be really critical to serving them at the highest level. As we talk about maybe learning new habits, doing new behaviors that are going to support our health and healing, Denise, how do you help them stay engaged in that process of moving towards our goals? Because sometimes we hit roadblocks, obstacles, we get discouraged. What do you do there?
Yeah. So early on, we look at that stuff. We want to be proactive rather than reactive. So it's important to understand early on in the process, how does accountability look like for that person? How do you want to receive it? How can I be there for you in the most powerful way? There are some people, they're like, I want a kick in the pants. I want you to text me and almost scold me if I don't get this right. And I'm like, well, we don't do scolding here,
Right.
but we definitely will give you firm reminders and remind you of what your personal why is. Why are you doing this? Why is this important to you? I feel that that why is always an important anchor for many people. And also, it's also about really understanding what are the barriers, what are the challenges earlier on. There's some people that because of their food sensitivities or allergies, eat completely different from their family members. And so often enough, they can't count really on their family because are in a complete different diet. So they feel alone in that process. That, that tells us this person might need more support. They might need to be checked in on a more frequent basis. And then when something comes up, letting them know that we have that lifeline and we're holding that lifeline for them. Because we often see that when people don't exactly follow, the suggestions that we give them, that there's shame and guilt. And that's something that we want to address head on, early on in the process, and understand, teach them about self-compassion and understanding and having grace in those difficult moments, because this is not about perfection. At the end of the day, this is a long game. So we want our clients to succeed, and we want them to understand that it's not linear. There are going to be ups and downs. And one of the things that I love that Julie always says is life in the messy. And life does get messy. And so we tell them, have grace, because we know this is hard. And if we can help you to create a new set point, then maybe when things don't go so well and life gets stressful, you're not, doing 10 steps backwards. Maybe it's 2 steps backwards, and that's okay. It's not about perfection.
I think those are some really great points for people to remember as they're making changes. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I want to jump back to Julie about some other lifestyle approaches that can be helpful in addressing root causes. And I'd like to jump to the whole neurotransmitter question and what can we do that help us to improve our mood, to feel better, kind of what are the things that we can do in that aspect?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, neurotransmitters are made up of amino acids, and amino acids make up protein. And so protein is really a critical nutrient, and I think one that is so misunderstood. We've been told, oh, Americans eat way too much protein. And then what we see in our practice is that women are like really not getting enough protein. And as we age, we actually sometimes need even more protein because we're more slowly repairing the cells and the tissues. And there's more of a tendency to become what we call sarcopenic, or the loss of muscle. So I love talking about neurotransmitters from the daytime and the nighttime. And it also impacts the way that we should be thinking about our food intake. So in the morning, the brain is full, or should be full, of serotonin, which is one of our feel-good chemicals. It is also one that provides that feeling of satiety or fullness and happiness. And so that should be elevated in the morning. And so that's where we want to make sure that we've got enough protein and then enough carbohydrate to allow the protein to do its work. But then as the day goes on, serotonin starts to dwindle, and melatonin picks up. And melatonin is signaled by nighttime and by the darkness. And so melatonin is really our rest and digest hormone neurotransmitter. It's kind of an either or in that respect. And so we want to start winding down our food intake, and especially our carbohydrate intake, as the day goes on, so that we are prepared for our rest and our digest at night. So neurotransmitters are fascinating area. And again, a lot of that has to do with making sure that we're getting enough protein and that we also have enough digestive acids and hydrochloric acid to be able to break down, digest, and absorb it.
So how does like sunlight play into that?
Oh, sunlight's huge. So vitamin D is going to play a role in terms of whether or not we're going to have enough serotonin, a neurotransmitter. And so one of the things that I really talk with people about is getting outdoors, even for 10 minutes a day into the sunshine. Get that nature fix. And in fact, as we start our spring detox program next month, one of the things that we'll be talking about with our clients is there's fitness, but then there's also nature. And we really kind of separate the two of them and say, we need to get your nature fix. And there's even, forest bathing and so many different things that people use as a way of trying to help us reconnect with nature. So sunlight will certainly impact our serotonin levels, which will help us to feel better. And I think that that's another big reason why there's so much depression and anxiety, is that while it's wonderful that we can connect thousands of miles away by internet, many of us are working behind a computer screen all day. If we do not take the time to get outside, then we're going to be reducing our neurotransmitter, pool, and then probably feeling less lively.
Yeah. I love that. I remember reading that morning exposure to sunlight actually helped increase our production of melatonin at night as well.
Yes, that's correct.
So, that's so important because melatonin doesn't just help us sleep, right? It helps us get rejuvenated, repairs our body. So
one of our major antioxidants, and it was a really important antioxidant during COVID. So studies show that people that actually had poor supply of melatonin, which we can test, actually did more poorly in terms of being able to recover from COVID. So again, it's this yin and yang. The higher supply of serotonin in the morning, more likely the higher supply of melatonin we'll have in the evening.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting and so important for us to know, because it's like if I only have 15 minutes to get outside, I'd be better off to get that in the morning than I would to get it late afternoon in terms of what it does in my body. So really optimizing even the way we use nature, the outdoors, fresh air, and all of those things which are so important for our health. Understanding that timing can make a difference, I think, is important for people to know as well.
Mm-hmm.
And before we close here, I want us to spend a little time on the blood sugar issue. And I know that one of the things you use with a lot of your clients is a continuous glucose monitor, also known as a CGM. So tell me something about, like, what do you educate your clients about in the use of it and how to get the most benefit from wearing the sensor?
Great question. I just actually took mine off yesterday. I always use myself as a guinea pig, when it comes to new supplements, new apparatus, etc. It's a wonderful way to look at the way that our blood sugars are responding to food, stress, lack of sleep, all of those different factors, exercise, and to see, where those numbers are going and what they look like. And so we can educate and coach people even more personally in terms of how we want to adjust their diet, their lifestyle, their fitness, their sleep, etc. And we use functional labs. So we're actually doing a webinar on Thursday called Know Your Numbers, and this is going to be dedicated for the Functional Female Health Report. But with functional labs, basically we're looking at a narrower range of optimized health rather than just, absence of disease, which could be the tail end of the bell curve. And with the CGM, we like to use a high number of 140 rather than 180, which is typically used in the diabetic or the pre-diabetic population. So again, we kind of educate our clients on the use of the meter, what kind of data we can get from it. We use the 14 days. And then for those clients that are working with us for longer periods of time, we will do that twice. We'll do one in the beginning. We'll do one a few months later after they've been implementing their, their lifestyle, behavior, and nutrition changes. One
And I love
thing
that.
about, oh, go ahead.
Just want to insert something here. I love that idea of using the sensors intermittently. Like you don't have to invest in
Oh,
wearing them all the time. But if you're
correct.
not a diabetic on insulin or whatever, many times the data you can collect from using them intermittently for 2 weeks at a time can be
Yes,
so helpful in understanding your body and how your body reacts to exercise and foods and all those sorts of things. So sorry,
absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure people were clear on that.
Yes, yes. So I know, targeting in on that whole blood sugar piece. So as you mentioned back at the beginning, I worked at Joslin Diabetes Center back in the 1990s. So back in those days, we were feeding people every 2 hours. Like, oh, don't go hungry, don't go hungry. Many years later, we realize, oh my goodness, now we're constantly pumping out insulin. Now we're creating insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, and along with a whole other bunch of inflammatory challenges. So we're trying to educate and support people to get in that 4 hour time frame, ideally, so that the blood sugar come down. There's a little bit of a resting time. And then also for people to have that 13 plus hours between dinner and breakfast the next morning so that the body does have an opportunity for the insulin levels to decrease. That will also help with melatonin production. It helps with reducing cortisol and all of that. And it also helps with the lymph in the brain called the lymphatic system. So we now know that dementia and Alzheimer's is called type 3 diabetes. And so one way of helping to prevent that piece is by allowing that lymphatic drainage to happen. And that's by giving that, roughly that 13 plus hours of rest from food from dinner to breakfast the next day.
And I love that because that's a type of intermittent fasting, which we know is really, really helpful. And I like that you bring out that fast section needs to be at night. I've known people that practice intermittent fasting, but they eating later in the day, like all their
Yeah,
window is late in the day, where
right.
what we really need is to make sure that the major part of our fast corresponds with our night if we're on a day night schedule, not working night shift or something like that. But
Sure.
I think that is so true, and it impacts so many other things, including melatonin production, as you mentioned, and our hormones, and it's just how our bodies were made to work best. So those are really, really helpful points. Before we close, I want to give Denise a chance to tell us a little bit about the free gift you have. If people want to click on the link below this video, you will find a link to their free gift. And just tell us a little bit about what that is, Denise.
Sure, absolutely. So Julie and I talked about, what can we provide to our audience, to people out there in terms of what can you get more bang for your buck? And we think about foundations. Obviously, we are a food first practice. But one of the things that we see a lot in our clients is lack of sleep or lack of hydration. And so we came up with sleep being one of the foundational things that can be so critical to health and wellness. And for women, especially in perimenopausal, postmenopausal era, sleep happens to elude us. And it happens to be, we have a lot of clients in this particular age range that are women. And so with the link, you'll be able to get our free PDF on sleep hygiene and what are the best practices in order to create a great sleep foundation for yourself. And if you've had it before and kind of lost it, had to get back into it, whatever the case may be, maybe you can fall asleep, but happen to wake up in the middle of the night, we have some tips for you as well. All of them naturopathic, of course. So be sure to check it out, and would love to hear from anyone who does take advantage of that, what they think of it and how it's working for them.
All righty. So there you go. Some tips and hacks to improve your sleep, something that will improve all of the things we've been talking about today. It'll help you lower your inflammation, balance your blood sugars better, take care of neurotransmitters and hormones. Lots of impact on our bodies when we get adequate sleep. So thank you so much
Yes.
for that, both of you, Denise and Julie. And I want to thank both of you for being with us here today to share from your base of experience ways in which we can optimize the way our body functions so that we can enjoy the best level of health and healing. And I want us all to remember that health is wealth and it comes by choice, not by chance. So thank you for joining us today.
You are so welcome,
Thank you.
Lucia. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.